Welcome back to the Lords of Lore podcast. I'm Matt.
I'm Luca.
And I'm Will.
And we are the Lords of Lore, the podcast for all things fantasy and sci-fi nerddom. Today, we are going to be changing the format of the show a little bit, doing some more personal segment-based segments of the show. Just in case people have missed it, last Friday, we put out episode 5 of Welcome to Ryan Doll, so check that out. That was fun. Without any further ado, Luca, I'll hand the reins over to you for Luca's
Yeah, so we will be renaming this because it doesn't make any more sense, because we're not talking about a book at all. We're talking about Dune again, because I don't remember. Do you guys remember how many times I had seen it when we reviewed it?
Yeah. You had seen it 3 times. You're going for a 4th. And
Okay. Well, I'm still at 3. I'm seeing it for the 4th time this weekend.
Okay.
Why?
Did you see it with your mom yet?
I did. Yeah, that was the third.
That was the okay.
That was the 3rd rewatch. Will, did you say why?
Yeah.
Because it's the best movie that's come out in since Blade Runner 2049.
Since the first Venom movie.
Stop it. Stop.
Go get him. It's Venom.
So essentially the reason I want to keep talking about Dune is because it's so good. And it's so good for cinema. It's so nice to see quality content back in theaters. And actually, one of the main things that made me want to talk about it again was our good friend Ochi, friend of the show, was like, they took it out of IMAX. I was like, what? What'd they put in? And he's like, Marvel Eternals. I was like, who is trying to see Marvel Eternals in theaters to begin with over Dune and an IMAX? Unbelievable. I'm just so sick of Disney just making mediocrity and being praised for it as if it's oh wow, the MCU is never before seen. It's decent, but Dune is such a rare 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 film. So why is it good for sci-fi and cinema? Because it sets the bar for what is quality content. Now anything we get in the Duneverse, which will certainly be a thing, the bar has been set for the quality of the cinematography, the music, the acting, the script, everything has been set at that level. And anything that's below it, people will be that's not Denis' vision. That's not quite. And so Denis got his second movie. He wants to make a trilogy. And on IMDb, he has a project in the works called Dune: The Sisterhood, which is a TV show that is said to follow the story of the Bene Gesserit.
Interesting.
I know nothing about it except for that it is on his upcoming IMDb credits, which just makes me so excited. And what I really hope for is that he will be allowed to film movies 2 and 3 at the same time, because he wanted to film part 1 and part 2 at the same time, just like how they did Lord of the Rings. But because Blade Runner was such a box office flop, they didn't let him use that budget and give him that much money to work with. But then what was it, 5 days after the theatrical release of Dune, part 2 was announced, I think.
Right.
Dune was the most successful ever theater and HBO Max release that they've ever done.
On God.
Because Dune,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Dune came out on HBO Max the day it came out in theaters in the States, and it still did 40 million domestic that first weekend in the States, which is Marvel Eternals, which is only in theaters, did 70.
Yeah. So it's weird hearing box office numbers now opposed to
before.
40 million opening weekend is a massive failure pre-pandemic. Now that's pretty fucking good.
Yeah, not only is it good for the pandemic, and it's because it came out in theaters, and that's domestic box office. That's US only.
Yeah, and a movie like Dune, I think, would carry legs places all over the world, I guess I should say.
Yeah. And this guy, Denis just does sci-fi so well. Arrival, Blade Runner, Dune. I don't know. Have you guys seen the original Blade Runner?
Yes.
How would you compare 2049 versus the original?
Oh, a great question. I think if you're a fan of 2049 and haven't seen the original, it's not a one for one. You'll definitely enjoy this. But I do think what Denis Villeneuve did that was similar to the original is that the same questions sort of get asked, albeit in very different ways. But it's still like you leave the original Blade Runner the same way you left 2049, which is with more questions and not really answers. And that's not really the point of Blade Runner. It's not like setting up this mystery so that you're like, what happened? Like the endings are sort of ambiguous, but I think it's more so like the philosophical questions that you sort of leave there with and think about. But I do think like the first one, just because of the time it was made in 82, it's like some of the things that Villeneuve was able to pull off are impressive because of technology.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, he was the director, so certainly his success. But, you know, it's just they're very much different. But I don't think if you love 2049, it doesn't mean you would love the original. And I know people who love the original who aren't fans of 2049, which personally I think is ridiculous. But I saw the original first and was like, I can see why this is revered. Although it's not my favorite, there are certainly things I love about it. And I love the questions I'm asking about it. And 2049 was sort of like a modern version for myself, which I think is superior to the original in every way. The original is good, so is 2049, and it's technologically more advanced.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you, Will? Have you seen the original Blade Runner?
Yeah, actually, I just bought it on Blu-ray not too long ago.
Okay.
Wait, but I also have to say the only version of the original I've seen is the fucking, I don't even know. There's like 7 different versions of that.
Yeah.
Movie. So it's not the director's cut. It's actually called like the final cut.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
the director's cut is like the best.
The director's cut is actually not the director's cut. It's like it's like a version of the film the studio put out and named the director's cut, but it's not actually why am I forgetting his name? You know, alien guy. Fucking Ridley Scott. It's not his total vision. Yeah, so which is shitty, but like the final cut apparently is. And so like I don't know, it depends, like the version of the film you see would definitely affect how you feel about that film.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's the final cut. I don't know. I just saw it like in a bargain bin for like $2 or $3. So I copped it, but I haven't like seen the OG one since I was like a kid. I did like 2049 though. Yeah. Giants neon waifu in the rain. Yes.
That was a great scene though. Like from what I've heard is like a lot of reviews being like the people that like the original a lot more is more from nostalgia rather than like you can say that it's objectively a better movie. But I think like the sci-fi elements of Blade Runner that carry into Dune, like they're so strong. Like there's just something about the visual appeal of his movies that like he just does sci-fi so well, and like he can do any of the genre, like any subgenre of sci-fi, like the rival Blade Runner and Dune. They're all very different within sci-fi, but they all like they have that like. There was an interesting. I was listening to Denis and Hans Zimmer talk about making Dune, and Hans Zimmer says something interesting where like for some reason, even though sci-fi always portrays like a future, good sci-fi tends to have like a very nostalgic feeling to it.
Yeah, like retro futuristic.
Yeah, like it just makes you feel like a certain level of nostalgia for some weird reason, even though like technology's advances, like through that lens of futurism, you can sort of appreciate like the humanity of it. There's like just something there that like only sci-fi has that feeling, really, like because it takes you out of the reality of our world and it like just shows you this like alternate possibility. I just think that feeling comes through so well in Dune. And another reason it's so good, the adaptation. Like you can just feel how like much work went into trying to adapt the source material, like with actual effort and love towards it. Where like
it's sort of like we're making the movie of this book not we're using this book to create a movie.
Exactly.
Which is, I feel like a lot of adaptation is the latter.
Yeah.
Like people really like this. We should make a movie out
We
of
should
it.
make Aragon into a movie. We should make Percy Jackson into a movie. We should make Uncharted into a movie. Assassin's Creed, like
I think too, like any video game movie, like maybe with the exception of Detective Pikachu, which isn't
and Doom, the first Doom movie. Love it with The Rock, Carl Urban.
Unreal. Oh, I've actually never seen it. Man, Carl Urban, fucking sci-fi fantasy legend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to go back to something you said, Luca, about
Yep.
Villeneuve and how he does science fiction. I heard something on a different podcast I was listening to where like sci-fi and fantasy, and we talk about this a lot, especially when we do like book reviews and stuff. It's going somewhere else to learn about home.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's why people are so drawn to it, because even though you're in these far-flung worlds or in the far future, there's still like a lesson you could learn about our real world in there. And I was speaking to a friend of mine over dinner about Arrival, and we were both like, dude, I cried. It's like I was bawling my eyes out. I was like, I know, right? And I think like even that scene with the giant joy in Blade Runner, parts of Dune as well, they're less nuanced to me because I've only seen it the one time. So I got to sort of live with it a little bit more. But there's parts in Arrival and 2049 to me where it's like they say so much about humanity while being these like high concept fantasy things, like the idea of like traveling through time and experiencing things both in the present and the future and the past, and sort of having that like that concept in Arrival, and what you find out what that means to that specific character is such a human feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with grief and loss and like going through all of it again type of thing. And then in 2049, like that scene where the carbon copy of Joy is like reaching out to him, and that's sort of where he's like reconciling his identity and everything sort of clicks into place there. It's like very like that scene is so powerful, even though it's like a beautiful sci-fi hologram scene. It's like very I don't know, this like sort of speaks to like the human experience.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what Denis does that other directors and filmmakers don't get. A lot of like we were talking about Star Wars too, where like some people might just go because like it's fucking cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like spaceships are cool, like we all agree on this, but like it's like what does making a spaceship that does such and such say about us as humans? Because we're all really sort of translating everything back to how we perceive it. So
mm-hmm.
I think that's the one area like he doesn't lose that as these worlds become more epic and like
and that's exactly why I was so happy watching Dune, like seeing a movie that's like fantastic and big and expensive and visually stunning, but like grounded in human emotion. And it's not just another Marvel movie like selling you on a sky beam and like superheroes flying and like like it's just so played out, and it cheapens the entire genre. And like I'm just so happy that this movie came out the way it did. It's like Blade Runner could have been that if they had marketed it correctly. Like they flopped on marketing it for sure, because it could have.
I think the problem they did was like they thought the original held more weight in like the general audience. And it's even like to this day, both films now are obscure films.
Mm-hmm.
Like people within this community surely know about them, but like it's not like I remember I went there and there was like a couple who was like, which movie should we see? And me and Sharif were like, oh, we're going to 2049, like check it out. Like, yeah, I think I've heard of Blade Runner before. And they were like, at the end of the movie, they were like, yo, what the fuck? Like, it's like they wanted like, the Marvel movie experience sort of thing. And it was very much not that. Yeah, sorry, I cut you off there, Will.
Yeah, I was just about to say, like, the majority of people I know that went to go see it mostly thought it was like an action movie. I think that was also just because of like some of the trailers too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
like we don't need that anymore. We've gotten the 15 16 Marvel movies. We'll get 15 more. We'll get 3 more Star Wars, hopefully, which will be better quality. Like they're rebooting Indiana Jones. I mean, they're doing all of these things. Like we just need the diamonds in the rough, because it is rough out there, man. Like it is.
I'm gonna push back a little bit because like I know you don't love Marvel films, and that's completely okay.
I don't. You see, I don't hate Marvel. Like I like them. I enjoyed them. I watched all of the Avengers in theaters except for Ultron. Like I've seen the movies. I haven't seen all of them. I admit I haven't seen all Marvel movies, but like I like them. I think they're good, average movies. Like they were amazing when they started coming, but it's like, okay, I get it. Like do something different now.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like almost like a TV show at this point, where it's like it's just a cultural thing. And I think that it sort of takes away from like how much work goes into those movies. And I think like the vast majority of them are like, you know, very well made films.
Absolutely.
But I agree that like some of the ground they cover in terms of story is very similar from film to film. Like you're always, because it's always like a superhero origin story, you're always getting that sort of coming of age story. And after a while, you know, like you're saying, like the sky demons get sort of played out. I think DC's a lot worse for this, to be fair. Like, oh, swirling mass in the sky, it's gonna destroy everything. Terrible. But like it just feels like somebody wrote a superhero script once and Hollywood was like, that's the one.
Exactly.
Like, keep making that movie. But that being said, like movies like Shang-Chi that just came out, that's a super fucking good film. And like it's so different from the Marvel movies in the ways that you want when you go to a new property, but it's the same in the comfortable, you know, like the humor of it and like the flow of the movie too. So like but that being said, like I wouldn't hold any Marvel movie to the same light I would hold up Dune. Because I think not even that it's a better made film, but it has to say more. Whereas Marvel movies are entertainment, and you can get filmmakers who put, you know, whatever sort of allegorical thing they want to talk about in their film can slide in there. And you know, those movies matter because like what happens in this one's going to matter in the next one and the next one. You want to sort of be, you know, with everybody when you go to dinner and talking about the Marvel movies. But Dune, I think, is like really had something to say when you made it. So like it's a little bit more important, I guess.
I think it's that like corporate hand that you feel in Marvel movies more often, especially in like the Star Wars 7, 8, 9. Like you could almost feel like just like a cold board of directors being like, oh yeah, like our statistics say this is popular, put this in it. Like it just feels like that.
Soccer ball. Everyone loves soccer.
The most popular sport.
The space football.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about. Just how happy I am that Dune is what it is, and that it is a success, and that he's getting more films, and that it's getting attention. And like all the criticism I've seen, it was like, oh, Zendaya's not in it enough. Like, come on. She'll be in the second one. Like they marketed it as if she's going to be like a main character, but like she'll be in the second one. Just like in chill.
First half of the book either, though.
So I can sort of see both sides of this argument, and like you just saw, my initial reaction was sort of like exasperated, but at the same time, when you market an actor of color being a main character, and then people show up for that, and then that's not in the film, that is a little bit problematic too. So like I can, but people approaching it from that way, like I totally can resonate with that, because like I imagine like if there was a film that was predominantly white people and they're like, look, we do have a black person in our film, and you show up and they're in the film for 5 seconds, you're sort of like, yo, what the fuck? It's sort of like,
yeah, but none of the marketing was based on race. Like people like her as a actress, you know, like she's a popular person, so they marketed it based on her name, which is like fine. So many movies do that. Like, yeah, I don't think it's so much like there's other like most of the supporting cast was actors of color. I mean, there was plenty of. I don't think it was like a racial thing, and like twisting it in that way is almost kind of like is like why do that? Like,
yeah, see, like, but to that point, like, I think if it wasn't an actor of color, you wouldn't have people being as upset, because I know, like, for me and like people I know, like when you go to see sci-fi or fantasy movies, it's rare that sort of were sort of represented in that way. So when you get a movie that's like, look, you're going to be, you can see yourself in this movie too, and then it's not, it is sort of like deflating. And like I can see like, people being like, it's not all about race, but like sometimes when there's like things like this that happen, it's sort of just like, oh man, like you sort of got our hopes up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get that. I can understand that, but it's like she'll be in the second one. Relax. She's a major character. Like she will be all over that second movie, along with all the other Fremen, which is just like entirely like multiracial supporting cast. So like you will get that. Like this was a slow build. Like I thought it was phenomenal. Like
my sort of complaint is like I wish sort of marketing was aware, but like obviously when you have like such a household name like Zendaya, like you do want to plaster that on everything. But I wish they were sort of more sensitive to.
It's also possible they were like overcompensating because of the way they marketed Blade Runner, where it was like we're just not even gonna like make commercials for it, and then now they're like, okay, well, let's just like shove all these famous people in your face, but like they're in it, like come watch this movie, and it worked. They watched it.
Yeah, which is kind of a gutsy move. If you, they must have known that they were going to get approved for a part 2. They had to have known because, I don't know. Because like I mean, like her character, Zendaya's character, doesn't really show up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I read. It's funny because like the first time I watched it, and like afterwards I read the that comic, being like, "Where was the day?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" She was like, "All over that movie." But then like I later, it's because like the way it's spread out, like his visions of her are spread. I was like, "What do you mean?" She was like everywhere in that movie.
Those are my thoughts too. Yeah.
And then later I like read something where she was like, she had like 8 minutes of screen time. I was like, really? Like,
okay. My sisters were actually telling me about this, and I was like, oh. Like you have to see the movie though, because just saying 7 minutes of screen time or whatever, it doesn't contextualize her role in the movie. But like I get it. But then I was like, yeah, Darth Vader was only on screen for 8 minutes in A New Hope. Like,
right.
It doesn't take that much time to make a appearance or like pull off a role. Even like Dave Bautista in not only Dune, but in Blade Runner 2049 doesn't have that much screen time.
Yeah, he was in like 5 minutes of it, just the start of it.
Yeah, but like again, I understand both sides of the sort of. I
just think if that's your biggest criticism, that's a fantastic movie. Like, like that is that'll pretty much do it for my thoughts on Dune for today, because I will definitely have more to come. Like after rewatching it for a 4th time.
Okay, I'll take it from here. So last week we spoke a little bit about props. And how when I'm watching movies like Dune, my immediate thought is, what am I going to 3D print from this bad boy? Or buy off Etsy, or, buy a replica of and repaint. And so beside me here, I have a few things that I've done that for. But I wanted to talk about, as you can see my background for audio listeners, it's a wall of swords from Adventure Time, which has some like shout outs to like some pretty classic ones.
Yeah,
I wanted to talk about magic items or props or quote unquote MacGuffins, because we know that's a weighted
and we don't know how to define it.
Yes. So I'm gonna hold up. You're talking about Blade Runner 2049. I have this little horse here.
Cool.
10 and 6 and 21, 6 and 10 and 21. For me, this is what goes into a good prop, in that this is something I have and I can hold. But when you sort of get this prop in your hand, and this is like an official replica from the company. I think NECA created this, but they're officially licensed, so they had access to all the props, photographs from set and stuff like that. And I think if I got this off Etsy, the detailing wouldn't be to that same standard. But I don't know if you can see here. At the top, it's probably blurry on camera, and I'm sorry for the audio listeners. Well, what I'm looking at is a horse, but if you look closely on this model, you can see that on its head, there used to be a part where a horn would stick out, or a unicorn. So going back to Blade Runner 1982, there is a dream sequence in the final cut where Deckard dreams of a unicorn. This is important because we later on see one of the other characters in the movie create an origami, which I also own. I didn't want to bring it here because it's fragile, of a unicorn, sort of implying that, spoilers for Blade Runner if people don't know this, that Deckard is actually a replicant, and his dreams have been implanted into himself, and that's why he dreams of the unicorn. Why that was interesting is because in 2049 we learned that Deckard is the one who actually created this horse, carved it for his daughter. Spoilers. And we can see that this actually used to be a unicorn as well, because it has the horn that ripped off. So for me, this is a super cool prop to get and sort of put that together. But it also sort of symbolic of Joe's character in that, you know, he's been told his whole life he is this one thing. And then through the movie, he sort of discovers, or thinks he discovers, that he's something else. So, you know, thinking you're a horse, actually being the unicorn. And then, you know, that sort of horn gets stripped away from him in a way. He finds out that's not actually true, but he can still be what he wants to be. And again, that scene with Joy, giant Joy coming down. And that's why that scene's so important to me, because that's sort of where he makes that decision. He leaves sort of the illusion behind and continues moving forward with himself and what he thinks he can be. You've probably seen I'm wearing a necklace from a Marvel movie which Luca hates, Black Panther.
Whoa. I don't need that heat.
Yeah, this one,
Based.
obviously, I just wanted it because it's cool. I own the helmet as well. Off to the side here, I have some Kamoyo beads where I can place a phone call and stuff like that. I wish I really could. And then I just have some of Ray's stuff to the side here. These are things I 3D printed. Her lightsaber hilt and her gun. And this one's from The Witcher. This is the medallion a Witcher would wear. I'm not sure what that means. Luca, you know, this is
the medallion detects magic.
Yes. Okay.
It vibrates.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are some things, but I wanted to talk and ask you guys what goes into your appreciation of an item in a story, but also a real world prop. Let's start with you there, Luca.
I think for a prop in a movie, what I appreciate is its realistic look. I think Lord of the Rings did that really well because Viggo Mortensen, the actor who played Aragorn, always carried the real metal sword whenever he filmed. So like when something looks like it has the weight it should, obviously you don't need that in like Star Wars. I'm talking about purely fantasy swords now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes you see those scenes where like the sword, it just looks too light. Like I appreciate that subtle detail where like it looks heavy, because you can tell when somebody's carrying something that's supposed to be heavy, but it's not actually heavy, and they're trying to act like it's heavy.
Yeah,
it's very hard to pull that off to like make somebody actually believe that you're carrying something heavy. So that's one thing that I love in like a fantasy sword prop. And then aesthetic appeal, like in terms of like what I want to have. I mean, I think I've said this before, like the swords, Aragorn's, both of their swords. I personally love anime props. Like, again, I'm a sword guy. Like from One Piece, Zoro, he carries 3 swords. He's had 4 in the anime. I want all of them. Yeah, I appreciate good looking props. Realistic looking if it's like a live action, and then something unique, like something that's like, for example, the was it Cloud sword that you have behind you in like Final Fantasy, like that's just such like iconic looking weapon, just like something that's, you know, iconic, something that you just want to have because it's so recognizable. I'm trying to think of some examples while Will tells us about his appreciations.
Yes. So I was mentioning earlier before we started recording, but the closest I've ever owned to like a movie prop or replica, I should say, was it was actually like the Rose box from the Da Vinci Code, like the movie /
Did you have the whole puzzle in it too?
It wasn't really a puzzle. It was just kind of like this words just spin.
Right, but you had like the thing, like
yeah,
I
it
don't
was
know
like
what
the
it's called.
box and then the codex or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Dan Brown is actually my secret guilty pleasure. I don't really care about plot holes. Yeah. Also, it's like one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen it probably like 30 times.
Do you prefer Da Vinci Code or Angels and Demons?
Da Vinci Code.
What about Inferno? That's one, right?
I actually liked Inferno. The book was kind of strange. It's probably the one I like the least.
Didn't Inferno come out like 10 years after the previous sequel?
Yep.
Yeah, pretty
What was
much.
up with that?
I
I
think
don't know.
when did he write the book? Like
2013, 14.
Oh, okay.
I remember like it was the first Dan Brown novel that I struggled to finish. Like I found myself like constantly like lacking interest, I guess. But yeah. Like it's actually actually the other one is actually the septum coin from the Oblivion Collector's Edition.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is for some weird reason because I've moved around quite a bit, just like because of like schooling and stuff like that. But for some reason, like I have never lost it. Like I'll like misplace it, but then it'll just like show up randomly.
Your lucky dollar type of thing.
Kind of, yeah. As far as like props, I tend to kind of go more so with like the fantastical side, just for I'm not really big on like the whole practicality. Like for example, like with the Witcher's medallion, I prefer like the Witcher 3 game version as opposed to
Yeah.
like I guess like the more like flattened shape. Because
Mhm.
like in the Witcher 3, it's like this big,
It's
not
like
very
the actual
big, but
wolf's
it's
head. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
3D wolf's head.
yeah, like it's kind of like a little bit larger and much more intricate, but I just kind of like that version of it. But yeah.
I mean, it's interesting when you see a prop like that where it's like you get multiple interpretations of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could even say the same about like Chris Knives and Dune, which I
Mhm.
had around here, but I think I've moved. Even the difference between like the mini series, then the original film, and then what we now have, like Denis Villeneuve's sort of interpretation of it. It's interesting to see that that could be described in the book, and you know, three different people or multiple different people have a different sort of perception on what that might look like.
Mhm.
Yeah. Let's move into swords specifically, because obviously when we're talking about fantasy, we have these sort of iconic pieces like Cloud's I think it's called the Buster Sword here. Obviously, right beside that behind me, we have the Master Sword. There's some other ones that I recognize but don't know. There's a lightsaber. I think these are Leonardo's
Yep.
Yeah.
called. And then this one from Thundercats. I don't know what it's called. But yeah, do you guys have favorite swords? I think for me, my like if I could own one sword, it might be the Master Sword. Like, and they do sell like a $3,000 like insane detailed replica of it, and I'm like, maybe one day I'll pull the trigger. It's just so perfect. But after that, I'm not sure. I do actually own a sword from an anime, Sword Art Online. I own Asuna's rapier, I think it is,
Okay.
which I broke. It fell and it snapped off the hilt. It was sort of like a cheap replica.
Mhm.
Got actually from an ex-girlfriend. So it's okay that it's broken. Yeah, it
Metaphor.
was like $100. Yeah. What about you guys? If you could own a sword, which
one
one?
sword.
Yeah.
Oh, like one of my first favorite swords of all time was Inuyasha's sword.
Ooh, the Tetsuega.
Yep. Like in the giant demon form, like that was cool.
I'm also a big fan, which you know, because in your D&D campaign, my character had like a version of that.
Yep.
Yeah, a big sword that got small when it was
So
convenient.
Cool. I love that. Oh, that's so tough.
For me, I'd have to say Aragon's sword and Duril. I don't know if that's
The Flame of the West.
Yeah, either that or actually I like Jon Snow's long claw. I actually really love the design for it. Like with
with the
like ivory carving and stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know. I prefer like the hand and a half like bastard swords. Like not something like too big, but something with enough weight to just like break someone's bones.
Yikes.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you want to
Oddly
swing, you want to like cut
But like,
the nose off or
but like,
something.
which sword specifically would you want? Like, if you
Probably
could have
Aragon's.
a recreation, like, yeah, Aragon's sword is cool.
Just classic look.
Ooh, also
Clean.
like
And
I don't
usually
know
I'm
if
not
you
a fan of
guys
minimalism.
minimal. Sorry, what?
Yeah, that's why I like Aragon's sword, just because it's like simple.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
And,
yeah.
and like I will say this, I'm usually not the biggest fan of the whole minimalism thing. So aesthetic look.
Did you read The Hobbit before? Obviously, before the movies came out.
Yeah.
And did you read The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings before the Lord of the Rings movies came out?
No, because
Okay. I was wondering if your visual interpretation changes based off the medium.
Oh, yo, like Aragon's sword is like an Aragon from the book Aragon.
no, like Aragon from Lord of the Rings.
No, I know that's what you meant, but like his sword in the book is like described really cool, like the blue
Yeah.
of his sword, like that is. I remember
Berserker.
that being very cool. His
Yeah,
sword
yeah.
is called.
Berzinger.
Oh,
It's
really?
like it's
That's what
like
it said.
the magic ancient language word for fire.
That's one of
But
the names of the books, right?
Yeah, it's book
yeah,
two.
book 3. But
Oh, right, eldest, then Brizinger.
yeah, but it's like kind of cool because it's like an anomaly because he can't say the word anymore. Because if you just say the word Berzinger, which is like his first and favorite spell, but now whenever he says it or like anyone says it around him, his sword catches on fire.
Nice.
So like it's actually kind of funny because like there's several times in the 4th book where he like, especially at the start, where he like displays a lot of like annoyance, I guess, because he has to like, because like the way magic works is chiefly predominantly used through like using the ancient language, so he can no longer just say fire instead of just like throwing a firebolt or something like that. Now he has to like describe it differently, so he's like kind of like, it's kind of like a little bit of a pain now because like instead of just like starting like using flames to like light a candle, he has to like specifically say light this candle as opposed to just saying fire.
Oh, it's like a dumb enchantment to put on a sword. You should have thought it out more.
Kind of, but like it wasn't like intentional.
Yeah.
It just happened because he's the chosen protagonist.
I remember that sword being super cool. Like when I was reading the book in, oh man, that was like elementary. That was so long ago when those came out. But honestly, if I had to choose one sword just to have, I think it would have to be one of Zoro's katana. Like I just love he has like one that's all black now from like later into the story. I love that. Like a nice heavy looking katana. That would be my choice.
Or Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber is my favorite as well.
Oh, do you have a favorite lightsaber hilt, Luca?
Hilt, I don't know them that well. The only one that's like, as soon as you said favorite lightsaber hilt, it was like Count Dooku's curved hilt.
Oh, yeah. See, okay, so this is why I think lightsabers make such cool props, is because they're all a little bit different
Yeah.
and distinct. There's a really cool episode of the Clone Wars animated series where you see how Jedi make their lightsabers. They go to this planet called Ilum. It's this ice planet. And you're sort of sent into like this cave. And this cave has like a waterfall in front of it. And at a certain time of day, it'll freeze. But as the sun comes up, the waterfall melts. And so you can gain access into the cave. And that's where the lightsaber crystals are. But they're not like in a convenient spot. You have to like go in there and like face some sort of trial. And the crystal will present itself to you through the Force. But you have to get out before the ice freezes. So it's like a time thing. And like, I'm pretty sure there's some younglings that have just like never come out of there. And like, they weren't ready, I guess. So,
that actually, the whole process makes a significant part of Jedi Fallen Order.
Like
PlayStation
absolutely.
4 game.
Yeah, you go to that planet, but it's been sort of annexed by the Empire, and they're mining it.
Yeah. Have you guys ever played it?
Yeah, I have.
I haven't.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, I don't want to say spoilers though, but I loved it because of just like the main character's realization about himself and stuff.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so like the way that sort of looks in the animated series is pretty similar to how it plays out in the game. So definitely check out that episode. But after you've got your crystal, you still have to like put your lightsaber together hands free. So you get all these pieces like the igniter, the shaft, the whatever, the guard, and you like float it above yourself. So you've probably seen like art of like a Jedi meditating and then like all these lightsaber pieces in front of them with the crystal in the middle. That's sort of what that speaks to, is like you have to put your lightsaber together in that way. And if it's done wrong, like it might just fucking explode on you. But yeah, it's really cool that like everybody has their own sort of journey to it.
Yeah, I love that.
Things like Count Dooku's, where it's like it speaks to like this sort of regal like countenance he has. And there's a Wookiee in the animated show where like his lightsaber is made out of wood, specifically from like the big trees on Kashyyyk. My favorite would probably be like maybe like Obi-Wan's first one with the ball at the end, and it's really cool. Like it's got if you've ever held it, it's got like a weird weight to it because it has like that club at the end of it. It's just like, it's nice.
I've always loved Qui-Gon's because of just like the simplicity, but also, which is kind of funny because I said fuck when it was earlier. But
except for swords.
But I also like, I've always liked like larger handles. Sounds kind of weird, but like, I mean, like even like my hockey sticks, every single one I've ever owned, like I always like add way more tape than most people do. It's just because I don't know, extra grip.
Yeah.
Oh, what about Guts's sword in Berserk?
I'm a pretty big sucker for giant
sword.
Yeah,
and like it's such a cool mechanism where he has like a magnet on his back to like take it off.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
that's
the
cool.
Clang.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, are you guys bothered by the historical inaccuracy of swords on the back? Because like
ever since I found out about it, I am.
Me too, man. Because like it's super impractical, and I always thought it was cool, like Link, just shing, and like, but even if when you try to do it, it's fucking unwieldy, man. I saw this guy. There's a YouTuber named Shadified, I think. And he sort of like disproves the theory that this is possible by making this scabbard where it would be possible. That's so
you could like pull it out from the side or something like that.
But I don't know. Will, does that bother you?
Depends, I guess.
Because like Geralt in the games has the swords come out like at the bottom, right?
No, he takes them off his back, but like every time you take them off, he like smacks the bottom of the hilt to like make it sort of horizontal, and then he pulls it off. And like even when he puts them back, like every time he hits them to like change the angle, so it like kind of like glosses over the impossibility of that. But like even that would not be possible.
Man, like my mind was blown the first time I saw that. Like like that detail.
Yeah, that was super cool.
Yeah, because like again, I never see that.
When I was like, playing Zelda as a kid, but even like the newer ones that have come out, when you take the sword off the back, it just sort of like you go up to here and then like the sword's out.
Yeah.
It doesn't like it glosses over it.
Another I want the Leviathan axe.
Oh, I actually have downloaded some 3D prints.
So,
that could be in the cards. We've been talking about doing a show, post-pandemic, called Hordes of Lore, and so when we get around to doing that, then I'll show off my whole prop collection, because it's more extensive than the few items I've brought today. But we'll save some of those goodies for later. If you could have one thing, so not specifically a sword, but one specific item from a movie, and its in-universe functionality comes with it, what would you choose?
Ooh. Oh man, that is so difficult. See, now I want something that like has functionality. It's like a sword, just a sword.
Yeah.
I might honestly pick a devil fruit from One Piece.
Oh.
Like if I could get the power of one of the fruits, I think I might choose that. You would lose the ability to swim, which would suck. but I think like ever since I saw that anime, that was like the second anime that I watched like start to finish. I mean, it's not finished yet, but like start to catching up.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw the devil fruit like magic system where you like eat a fruit, you gain that power, lose the ability to swim, like I was like, that's so cool. I love that like magic system. I think it would have to be maybe the main villain of the show has like a dark fruit. I mean, they all have like the two English names, but the dark fruit, like that is just such a cool power. I mean, you guys haven't seen One Piece, but trust me, it's cool.
Your word for it.
Will, what about you?
Favorite prop?
Like if you could pick something from
IRL.
Yeah, and then you get its actual functionality in the real world, what would you pick? I want to say like the Tartarus. Although I'm not very familiar with Doctor Who, the capabilities of that thing, I think would probably be the best. Or maybe like the skeleton key. Something like that.
From Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say probably Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball.
Just one single. I can get you one. It's like $25.
Just like a single one. No. I mean like to have like the actual powers. So then if I have one, nobody else will have it.
Yeah, but then there's only one. You need all 7 to even do it.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just don't want other people to have wishes.
Fair enough.
Damn.
Oh, okay. I'll throw it over to you now.
Its IRL capabilities are just nothing. It's just a giant marble.
Just the sick joy of knowing everyone else is just as unhappy as I am.
Yeah, because I mean, like realistically, the only person that can find it is like Bulma with her compass. But like, if she just shows up, I'll just break the compass.
Man, what?
and then just like I don't know, put it in a hole in my backyard or something.
Why?
Nobody else can have wishes. And if you watch GT, you know what happens if too many wishes are made. So
what happens?
That's not canon.
In my canon. The series ended after GT, man.
Fair enough. I knew Oilers won the cup in 06. Let's move on here. Yeah, go ahead, Will. What do you got for us today?
More Dragon Ball. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So, new segment info coming at you. Yeah, we're dumping Will's wondrous wisdom.
See you later, Weenie Will.
Yeah, no longer we will. Yeah, no. New section titled kind of in a word, but we're looking at Will wonders why, as in why the fuck does Dragon Ball continue after GT? No, I'm kidding. Sorry, came up with this afternoon, but yeah, just basically me going to ask, I guess, kind of like a question that will either be attempted to be solved by my two co-hosts or myself. I'm kind of thinking more of like an essay style question because, yeah,
we all love essays.
Yeah,
yeah. I know for me, especially when we made this podcast, I was like, how can I get back into writing essays?
Exactly, right? I guess kind of like a thesis statement attempt to
I'm just
research question. I don't know. Yeah, again, title still in works as well as segments. It's still in works. Today's, I guess, semi-briefish discussion will be focused on why would anyone want to build a wall, specifically in the current day UK? Well, let me tell you why. Keep those rowdy Picts out. Yeah. Today we're going to, I guess, talk about Hadrian's Wall, one of the famous walls, along with the Great Wall of China and a certain wall that was never finished in the US.
I have a question.
Yeah, lay it on me.
I've never heard of this wall.
You've never heard of Hadrian's Wall?
No,
Why?
what is it?
Exactly. No, we're looking at why the Hadrian's Wall. No.
But what?
Yeah. So what is it? It was a wall that stems from kind of coast to coast in a certain part of the UK, specifically Wallsend on the River Tyne to Bowness on Solway in the west. So a major misconception of this wall is that it marks the, I guess, like the boundary between Britain, or not Britain, England and Scotland, which is actually incorrect. But it's in the region of Northumbria, which is in northern England. Again, basically, when the Romans had invaded, I guess, modern day UK, specifically, mostly England, really, they basically landed and had to deal with all the people who were all living there, and things were not very good between those two. So there's a lot of fighting going on, and as the Romans kind of pushed northwards, it just kind of like issues of supply lines, communication, etc., became very, very difficult. So they were just like, fuck it, this is where we're going to end for now. So they built up this huge wall. It runs a total of 73 miles. So that's fairly large, close to 120 kilometers, I guess you want to say, for those on the metric scale. Yeah, it kind of varied in heights, from my understanding. Mostly used for like rocks and stuff like that. But like, there's not much of it left today because a lot of the stonework had been like repurposed. But like when I was looking it up, one of the cool things that I saw was that it was kind of used as like a customs office, which is kind of interesting to like imagine, like, I guess some sort of like for me specifically, it's always kind of hard to imagine like formal trade and like organization, because like when you think of like the past, it's kind of hard to imagine similarities, if that kind of makes sense. Well, for me anyways, like it's kind of always kind of cool to hear like, oh, there was some form of bureaucracy and stuff like that we all go through whenever we get off a plane or whatever across the border. People had to deal with it back then. So there's just misery, just unending. But yeah, I mean, it's also kind of funny. I didn't know this, but it's apparently a second wall was put up like 20 or 30 years later, and just like further north a bit. So I could imagine if you're like,
why?
I guess they thought maybe we could kind of push forward a little bit more. But just like, could you imagine like working on that, and then it's just like, yeah, we're gonna build another. It's just like, fuck, man, like let's just finish this one. Yeah, but it
Did you
also
say
kind
30
of
feet in front of the other one?
no, like I meant like 20 to 30 years.
Oh,
like
later.
after the completion.
Okay. Sorry, I confused that.
Yeah, no worries.
That would be a piss off.
Yeah, but I think its primary use was just a giant fort.
Yeah,
to support giant forts, because a lot of the relations between the Pictish people and that kind of made up the majority of modern day Scotland did not get along with the Romans and stuff. So they were just like, yeah, fuck it, let's just build a giant fort. We're gonna build a wall, is what he said.
So we can see behind you, for audio listeners, there's a picture of this wall behind Will. What is that stuff sort of on our side of the wall? It looks like trees. I'm also looking at some other Google images. They look like what would, like spikes, like for people who jump the wall to be certainly impaled.
So this is actually called a vallum, and I think it was in certain parts of the wall. It was found on both sides. I didn't know about this until actually today. yeah, it kind of like a ditch. Yeah, so like there would be like this kind of like almost like a moat, but not really a moat. And then also um like you'd have two mounds that were like pronounced on each side. So like I guess you can't see my hand. Yeah, so these two ridges, those were actually intentionally put on. And
Okay.
my understanding is it was kind of like the Roman DMZ. So like that's kind of like that was kind of like the limit of like where non-Roman soldiers could enter or go up to before you get murdered, I guess.
Certainly impaled, as Matt.
Yeah, or just shot with arrows. Yeah, definitely varied throughout, but it was 100% intentional and ran.
Okay,
so majority.
So what we're seeing behind you, is this what the people who built the wall would see on their side, or is that the other side?
In certain parts, both, but majority on the other side. The other side being, I guess, the Scottish/Pictish side.
Okay.
Which is all called Caledonia, which is kind of cool.
That is a cool name.
So it's like if I tried to jump the wall, I would fall into these spikes. Let's say I survived that, I would then have to go through this ditch and get arrowed at.
No. So you'd actually start from the mound. So you have to run up this mound that was, I don't know, 20 to 30 feet high.
Okay.
And then you'd probably get spotted, and then you probably just get like annihilated.
And if I didn't, I would impale myself by running towards it.
Yeah, or you'd have to just like deal with like going through that, which would take a while. And then, you know, if you climb up, you run the risk of falling onto it.
Oh, I see.
If there were spikes, but you would like, I think the whole idea is to have like a better sight line of who's coming in and just kind of inconvenience any raiding party or whatever.
You got to run downhill, then uphill, then through spikes to get to the wall, and then you have to climb it.
And then you have spikes on the other side again.
Yeah. And another ditch, just to, if you make it that far, just to spite you.
And then also, depending on the area, you'd have like guardhouses and outposts and stuff like that, and all that fun stuff. I think one of the coolest depictions is in Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which, as a side note, like the reason why I love the Assassin's Creed games is almost because of the setting. Massive Assassin's Creed apologist, but I don't care. I love the games. Another guilty pleasure. But yeah, like you get to see, I mean, like at that time, like the wall is like 800 years old at the time of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but it's still kind of cool to see how like it's still intact and it's still like this giant like looming force that like there's still people on it and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, the majority of it over time was just repurposed for castles and shit, roads and etc. Yeah,
I think, was this the wall that inspired George Martin when he wrote like Song of Ice and Fire, where he, because I know I heard like an interview where he was saying like he was in England at this wall and he was talking about how it was like the border of the Roman legions, and he was like imagining himself as a Roman soldier here at like up north in this foreign country, England, fighting these like barbaric people like so far from home. And that's like sort of the mentality he had when he was like trying to think of the wall for his story.
That's spot on, because I mean, if you think about it, like Rome is in the Mediterranean, right? And then like to them, or like the average person in Legion or whatever, like that was like the end of the world, like the frontier, at least for a time being, right? And then you have just all these people every once in a while rushing in and out and like getting into fights, stuff like that. So very strange, which is pretty much kind of how, like, I don't know if you were a random conscript from King's Landing going straight to the wall, like that's kind of how you'd see it as well, right?
Yeah.
Like this is it. This is everything that we know about the world ceases to exist after this point, at least for like general public.
No, it's I loved hearing that. Like that's such a cool, it's like fantasy inspired by real life.
Yeah, and like again, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla does a pretty cool job of it, also because the map of the game itself ends at just past the wall, so it is the boundary for the game itself. But like it's kind of cool to see like the size and scale of it all.
I think it's a common trope too, like in fantasy especially, where there is this sort of dividing line between the known world to the characters and then everything else. So even like I think Lord of the Rings sort of borrows from Game of Thrones in this way, not the books, the game, Shadow of Mordor, and that like you're a ranger on the wall type of thing. Definitely sort of felt inspired by the recent success of Game of Thrones. But also when you think of things like animes and Attack on Titan, there's a very sort of hard line between in here, which is civilized society,
Safety.
and out there, which is danger and barbarism.
Yeah, which is kind of always occupied a lot of thoughts with the whole idea of like wilderness and stuff like that. So side note, super bored early in September, so I decided to do the Conqueror challenge, which some of you might have been bombarded with ads on Instagram. So I did the Hadrian's Wall, so it's like you record like your distance and stuff like that. Did it in 6 days because it's about drive and power, and we stay hungry and we devour. I will never do it in a timeline like that ever again because I thought my body was going to shut down on the 6th day. But
so you traveled the whole length of Hadrian's Wall whilst doing other exercises in a matter of 6 days. Wow.
Yeah, but it was kind of cool because like on the app you could see like kind of like an Apple/Google Maps Street View, and it would kind of give you like an update, but it also gave you like historical like postcards, which I thought was kind of cool.
That's sweet.
Yeah, so it'd be like,
do we know what was required of Roman soldiers when like they had to go from one side of the wall to the other? Would you be accepted into the Legion is the question I'm asking.
I think that's a whole other topic, but it was very, very common for a lot of legions. I know generally they would be so like the general game plan is you'd have like a Roman legion go out somewhere, like invade an area, fuck everyone's shit up. It's kind of establish some sort of fort, and then after a while and like mingling with the local population, they would generally form like auxiliary legions, which were usually made up of all like the local recruits. Which I think we talked about this in our barbarians episode, like back in like May.
Yeah.
So we had like the Battle of Tannenberg, which was like a downfall because a lot of the auxiliary legions turned on like the actual like Roman born legions.
Right.
So yeah, that always doesn't work out. But apparently the Hadrian's Wall could host up to 10,000 like legionaries like at a single time,
and you amongst them.
Yeah, I know. I saw every single one of them.
So
what's
going
up,
back
Quintus,
to your
my guy?
Going back to your essay question, why build a wall? So we know for them,
poor question, but yeah.
No, I think it's a good one, especially when we're talking about fantasy sci-fi. Like, what do you think sort of the importance of have, like, I know I spoke about, the known world, and then everything else is sort of part of the adventure, the unknown, or for the author, things you don't have to write yet, or things that you can change as you see fit. I've always wanted to run a D&D game in the style of Attack on Titan, where you were stuck in this small area and everything else was certain death. But it's tough to do without, like, if people have seen Attack on Titan, the spoilerific, which I think was really part of the appeal to that show, like the mystery of what the fuck is going on is really important to it. So it might be tough to do, but sorry, I'm rambling here.
I think a lot of it lends to like character development. Because like you have like going beyond a wall, be it an actual wall or just like city walls or whatever, kind of like adds to character development because it forces like characters, I guess, to like mature. So for example, again, we were mentioning off screen was the Metro 2033 games, where you have a character who spent the majority of his life growing up in this single metro station underground. And then all of a sudden he's like thrust into a task where he has to go like to the other side of the metro station, which is to like the other side of the metro line, which is like super perilous, as well as like going outside onto the surface of like this irradiated area that's full of like mutants and freaks and bandits and stuff. But like that's kind of like what we see a lot in, like, for example, like Star Wars, like Luke leaving Tatooine and like the farm and having to deal with the world outside of that. Or yeah, I think that's like pretty common. Or even like in the Green Knight, when Garwin leaves Camelot, like we kind of see that.
That was really good.
You sounded just like him.
Yeah,
Garwin. Yeah, even the line in Lord of the Rings. You know, if I take one more step, this is the furthest I've ever been from home.
Yeah, leaving the Shire, like to the average hobbits, the world kind of ends at, I guess, like where the Shire ends, really, right? So yeah, or you could just be buying time when you write, because
honestly, like, okay, so this is going to be a little bit of a tangent, and Luca, I'm gonna throw it to you in a second because I think you'll understand where I'm coming from.
Cool.
But when I started playing D&D, I was the dungeon master and I started homebrewing a universe, which is an extensive task. And anyone who's ever done it before will tell you start small, do a little village, and then expand out. And what you say is fucking not me, dude. And you build a whole world, and eventually you realize that like some of these things are too large to connect. And you know, you could have taken all the things you put in 6 different cities into one, you know, distinct city with a bunch of cultures, and now you just have 6 different cities that are sort of bland. Anyway, that was my experience. But when I sort of started listening to lore videos and reading up on the universe of Game of Thrones, it was around the time when I was starting to really understand world building and my own world building through the lens of D&D. And I was so unimpressed with George R.R. Martin, which I don't know if that's a fair statement to make, but the way the world was set up in these vague sort of like, oh, there's dark black glass over here and there's this over there, it very much felt like stuff that like, I haven't finished writing yet, but I've left these clues that, you know, should I decide that everything is connected, I'll have the stones, you know, to pull it off. And I don't know, I love a mystery. Like I said, Attack on Titan, the biggest draw for me was what the fuck is going on here. But I hate when, and I understand why it's done, but I just hate when a writer sort of leaves things in this like non-existent space just so that if things change, they can come back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, it just like, I don't know, it's like seeing how the sausage is made, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you have that same sort of experience when you were homebrewing your campaign setting, or am I alone on that?
No, absolutely. And you even told me, you were like, you know, like if you don't want to do the work, like you can just grab like a done campaign. And I was like, psh, I can homebrew a world. Are you kidding me? Like a continent, a map, a history. I get like, that's no problem. And the same thing happened. I was just like, if you remember, there was an entire like 4-week period where I just put you guys in a dungeon that was just like ever expanding, so I could like keep working on the world. Like,
yeah, there's a dungeon that had its whole world within it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you're in the labyrinth now. I need to build things outside of it.
It was like Lucas' greatest hits of like the recent books and video games you'd played.
Literally,
it's all in there.
I started throwing missions out of The Witcher 3 directly into the campaign.
Yeah.
But actually, I've watched a lot of lore videos about A Song of Ice and Fire, and I'm with you 100%. Where all of the most interesting seeming concepts are so surface level and not connected to the story at all in any way, shape, or form, and it feels like very. Just like, yeah, exactly. Just like he thought of a cool idea, threw it in there, sort of added a layer to the world, and it's never going to be explored. I mean, he's probably never going to finish the story of Westeros, let alone all of the Essos things. And then Sotheros, like there's one thing mentioned about that continent being like one of the Targaryens tried to fly over that whole continent with their dragon, and like after like 10 days straight of flying, they couldn't see even the border of this endless forest, and they turned back. Like,
right, yeah.
Like that's super cool in like in concept, but like, and then what? You know, like it just, so you're setting up these, or like what's the city? Shy, yeah. where it's like all this
black glass stuff, right?
yeah, like everything very what's that dude's name, Lovecraftian, like
yeah
like very Lovecraftian, like literally pulled from those stories, like the greasy black stones and like a city with no light and all this stuff. And it's like there's characters that have been to this city, quote unquote, to like learn magic, but we just like get nothing out of it. And it's like, sure, if you give me all of those things in book one and then like I have 7 books to explore it, fantastic. But like I think specifically for Song of Ice and Fire, it feels like there's a lot of real world myths and real world inspirations that he just threw in to like make this seemingly deep and colorful world that you'll just like never get to see, because our story is contained to Westeros, which is pretty much like based on British feudal like conflicts.
And I almost feel as like if I didn't know all that information, I might appreciate the world building of it more. But it like honestly, when I was hearing that stuff, I was like, man, this is the type of shit I would do for like a half-assed D&D game, like a one-shot. It's fucking like, this is your world, man. Like you don't even know it's west of Westeros. You wrote it, like
yeah. No, it's like in one hand, it's like the characters don't know, so you as the reader don't know.
right?
Yeah, I was just.
And it's like
that's immersion right there.
And it's like I'm okay with that, you know. But like there's so much we know, and it's like I feel like the story we're hearing in Westeros is great. Like I'm not going to say it's bad. Obviously, it's fantastic. It's one of the best fantasies ever written, no question. But like honestly, watching the lore videos about Essos, I'm like, that's honestly cooler. Like I'd rather hear about like oh my god, I forgot their names. There's like a civilization inspired by like, I believe it was Chinese. I can't be sure, but they were like, yeah, that. Like their fights with the Dothraki and like how that whole situation developed. Like there's so many cool things I heard from just those lore videos, and I don't even know where that's from. Is it like, I mean, I still haven't read A Song of Ice and Fire, but like I'm assuming there's like characters that drop those like nuggets of lore throughout the books.
Yeah, there's also just like supplemental books that just explain some of this.
Yeah, like a lot of time they're, I guess, foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
kind of like as we would have seen like travelers and stuff like that IRL in history.
I just think the amount of that kind of stuff there is in A Song of Ice and Fire specifically is kind of off-putting, because like for example, just the Sotheros, like the fact that it's like this endless island of forest that like anybody who's like gone into has died, and like few people have come back except for like maybe like what's his face, Greyjoy, Euron, yeah.
Even that is kind of debatable because he's described many times as being a liar.
Yes.
Yeah,
what a waste of a character too. But
going back to walls, I think like the difference is like, even when we get past the wall, and I'm only speaking towards the show, like it's hyped up to be something that I feel like it doesn't really pay off in being in this area that like once you go, there's no coming back type of thing. And when we get past the wall, it's just sort of like, oh, the world's just a little bit bigger and other people live here, and that's it.
Yeah. See, like that's one thing I disliked about like that whole arc, because in the books, like there are different regions north of the wall, and like there are like for example, like there's one region just because of like the volcanic activity in the area. It's like a very, very warm place, and like it's kind of like Bronze Age stuff going on. So, which is,
well, they did change a lot in the show. Like I think even the northern tribes, like the Thenn, they're like they turned them into like warmongers, whereas I think in the books they're like the most advanced of all the Northmen.
Yeah, that's the Bronze Age type.
Oh, okay,
yeah, and it's like very just like normal people, just Bronze Age technology, and instead we got, you should really try eating crow. Man, when I saw that, I was like, what the fuck? And then that's where I just like stopped liking the series.
Okay, well, so let's finish the segment with your thesis then on walls.
Why we build walls.
Oh, well, I guess thesis should have been at the start, but
yeah, that is how you write essays.
Yeah.
The conclusion. I guess
I
is
know.
keep shit out on the other side. Also, I think just boundaries. I think is the best one. Like if you're going to use it in writing for fantasy, because just kind of having that whole unknown region for your character to discover helps the reader just discover the story. I don't know. Also,
that was beautiful.
you could also use it as for buying time, like what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I think that'll do it here for us.
It'll be more fleshed out next time.
Hey, we're experimenting with some things here, so tell us what you think. As always, I am Matt. You can check our I don't know why I did this in that order. Check out Ryan Dole last Friday episode of Lords of Lore Adventures. Welcome to Ryan Dole episode 5. Check it out. We got some content coming for you here. Actually, by the time you are listening to this coming Friday, do not miss it. We have our first review. It might come out Friday or Saturday, so just stay tuned. Make sure you're putting those notification bells on so you're notified when we do release our first review of the Wheel of Time series. The first 3 episodes are coming out this Friday, and we are going to be reviewing all 3 of them at once. And then all subsequent episodes of the Wheel of Time, we will review for you here as they come out. So look out for that. Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan. We're going to have reviews for both of those shows with Talib and I, and whoever else wants to come on that show. And look out for the ruminations we're going to be doing this month. Just announced last Friday, Kith and Kin. I'll be joined by Cam Chapman, official Lord of Lore, the 4th Lord of Lore of history and friend of the show, DM extraordinaire. And then we'll be joined by a special guest that I haven't told you guys about yet to review Dune when we get to that at some point in the coming months.
Nice.
And obviously you can catch our normal rumination and anything else we do here. So thanks for listening. As always, I am Matt.
I'm Luca.
I'm Will.
And we're the Lords of Lore.